Do you know the speed at which cherry blossoms fall? 5 centimeters per second. It must really be a lonelier journey than anyone could imagine, cutting through absolute darkness, encountering nothing but the occasional hydrogen atom, and flying blindly into the abyss, believing therein lie the answers to the mysteries of the universe. Cherry blossom leaves fall 5 centimeters per second. Sometimes these leaves are stuck together when they fall, but eventually they break apart and go their separate ways before hitting the ground. This in itself is a direct metaphor to the film 5 centimeters per second and its main characters Takaki, Akari, and Kanai. Typically, a film that deals with romance has a preconceived notion that the main two characters are bound to fall in love and stay in love, no matter what trials they may face. It could even be seen as if they are connected to each other by the red string of fate. The director Makoto Shinkai will often cement these ideas in his films. In Weathering with You and Your Name, for example, this idea proves to be true. But, in 5 centimeters per second, he explores the complete opposite of that idea, where, albeit depressing, is a much more realistic approach to relationships. The film itself is divided into 3 episodes, each taking place at a different time in Takaki's life. Episode 1 is titled The Chosen Cherry Blossoms, which introduces us to our primary leads, Takaki Tono and Akari Shinohara. The very first things that are spoken in this episode have an inseparable theme to the film itself. Akari introduces the idea of cherry blossoms falling 5 centimeters per second, which holds itself true to the journey between Takaki and Akari, beginning by having them as children being very close to each other and always being close in proximity. But as time moves forward and they begin to grow older, they begin slowly separating, taking larger and larger leaps from each other, but still trying their best to keep in contact. And as they begin to age, we begin losing sight of Akari, as she has moved away to a different town, and we begin taking a heavier perspective from Takaki, only being able to hear Akari's voice and see her messages and letters. And slowly, as time moves on, we learn that Takaki will be undergoing an even larger move. So, the two decide to see each other. And during these tender moments where Takaki is taking trains to reach Akari, we become invested in his life and relationship with Akari. And we learn that they are scheduled to meet at the train station at 7 p.m. And as Takaki begins making his way towards Akari's train station, snow begins to blizzard. And because of this, every single train Takaki takes gets delayed further and further. And as the hours and minutes begin to slow to a crawl, we see Takaki continuously observing his watch, growing restless as the minutes pass, with no progress towards Akari. And at this point, the time the two were supposed to meet has long passed, causing Takaki to worry if Akari's still waiting for him or not. But as the final train reaches Akari's station, Takaki's eyes light up as he finally meets her and sees her sitting, sleeping in the train rest area. And this puts the thought in the viewer's mind, causing us to believe that everything will be okay, and that Takaki and Akari will always be together regardless of any circumstances the two will undergo. Therefore, the two share a kiss. The kiss they share mean completely different things to each other, though. For Takaki, it was a prolongation of the relationship, ensuring that true love can fight against all odds, and it quite literally would change his life, as it would cause him to hold on to the idea of them being together, and he would hold on to that idea for a very, very long time. However, for Akari, this kiss they shared was goodbye, and that the very idea she introduced of cherry blossoms and 5 centimeters per second was true. She understood that people grow apart, and that she and Takaki were simply not meant to be together, and so she moved on with her life, knowing that she and Takaki were not meant to be. And in the back of Takaki's mind, he knew as well what this kiss meant, but the feeling of not being with her was too unbearable. He was comforted by the idea of being together, even though he knows the rate at which they move apart will always be continuous. The second episode introduces the third lead, Kanai. Kanai is in the same class as Takaki and worked much harder to be able to get into the same school as him. And as her feelings begin to develop and deepen for Takaki, she begins mustering up the courage to confess her love for him. So, on one day that was going especially well for Kanai, she decides to attempt to confess. But as the day goes on, she begins to realize something. She realizes that he was never looking at her, but always at his phone, and that he was always clearly in love with someone else who was not there, Akari. So, from this point forward, she contrasts Takaki and Akari by letting go. She decides to let her feelings go off and not hold on to something that's not meant to be. This contrasts with Takaki still holding on to his love for Akari and still refusing to let go, even though the relationship has become bleaker and bleaker. Then we are introduced to the idea of cosmonaut. Cosmonaut essentially means one that travels space. Throughout the entire episode, there are scenes that include stars, galaxies, and all-around cosmic imagery. This is the episode that Kanai realizes that Takaki was never looking at her, but was always reaching and looking for something else. This revelation is preceded by the imagery of a rocket flying into space. She realizes that this rocket is somewhat of a direct representation of Takaki, and how he'll always look off to something that is out of his reach, and never at the thing directly next to him. He'll always look beyond the sky into space, and beyond her into Akari. In the graphic novel of 5 centimeters per second, you learn that Takaki wants to become an astronaut when he grows up. I wish they had included this in the film, as I feel it's an absolute necessity towards understanding his true motivations. Even before he met Akari, he had a predisposition to search for things beyond what his environment could possibly provide. Of course, Shinkai was never subtle about the fact that Takaki never stopped looking to the stars. I believe it was embedded in his character that Takaki was bound to live his life feeling a sort of unfulfillable longing regardless. That, like the cherry blossoms moving at 5 centimeters per second, he'll always be too slow. He'll chase after things that are too far in front of him to ever catch up, without ever realizing that he was never even at its side. I guess no matter how beautiful something may seem, whether it be dreams or love, it will get passed by. In the final episode, we see Takaki as an adult, clearly depressed and wither-hearted. He has a girlfriend but doesn't love her and has a job he doesn't enjoy, which contrasts with Akari, who's shown to be engaged and seems to be very happy. And after seeing this, the film brings up the most iconic scene. We see Takaki and Akari passing each other on a train crosswalk. And in this moment, Takaki turns around to look at Akari, and Akari begins to turn around as well. And we begin to recall the idea of a love story, where true love can hold up against all odds. And even though we know that this is a story of the parting of Takaki and Akari, we believe that there's still a possibility of them rekindling their relationship. But at this moment, when they are just about to meet, the train intercepts their meeting. And as the train speeds by, the feeling of uncertainty, whether Akari is actually waiting for him or not, begins to build, similarly to when they met as children. And as the train finally passes, seeing nobody is there, Takaki turns away with a smile. He's finally releasing not just his love for Akari in this moment, he releases everything, including pain, longing, and everything in between. He takes a step forward towards the future and has concluded his feelings and dreams towards Akari, in turn, realizing the true meaning of the quote she stated in the beginning. Do you know the speed at which cherry blossoms fall? 5 centimeters per second. They have drifted apart like cherry blossoms. This video really has no point. The main reason I made it is I enjoyed this film and I wanted to talk about it. The reason why I love this film so much is I watched it directly after a breakup. I found a film that felt real, a film that made sense to me at the time. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to find another film that I could deeply relate to, like 5 centimeters per second. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I truly, genuinely appreciate your viewership and would love if you could write a comment down below on how you feel. And of course, if you enjoyed it, drop a like. And if you would like to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. Again, thanks for watching.